The views, ideas, and content of WellSeekers and their guests are their own opinions, and you should always seek additional professional help around any of the issues discussed here on WellSeekers.
Welcome back to WellSeekers, where we are in the middle of a series we are calling the Rebuild Lab, where we are helping people rebuild in mind and body and spirit after you've had a loss or hit a bottom of some sort. And it really doesn't matter what that loss is, whether it's personal or professional or a relationship or a dream of yours, and where you are on your journey. Maybe you have fallen completely to the ground floor of life and you are rebuilding, or maybe you got off on level 3 and you want to be at level 10. This series is for you. We have real experts, real stories, real solutions in a time where you don't even know if people are real. I am not fake. You can probably tell that though. I would probably look a lot different if I was AI. But we have a real life expert on the show today who I have followed for a bit of time now, and he has just exploded with good reason. His name is Dr. John, and he is a board certified surgeon. He also is a longevity expert. And we have him on talking about how do we rebuild our bodies from the ground up. One of the reasons I asked him to be on the show is because I've had a lot of people who used to listen to the show and people in my life, personally and professionally, who have asked a lot lately about the physical aspects of the rebuild. And I think when we think about rebuilding our lives, we think mind and spirit, which are essential and incredibly important. But your mind is in your body. It's one of the things I have said from the start of WellSeekers. Your mind is part of your body. So how can we not look at the body, right? And how the mind affects other parts of the body. Dr. John is going to be coming on and talking about it all. How do we rebuild our holistic self? He is phenomenal. If you don't follow him on social media, you have got to. I will put all of his links below. If you listen to the show, you know I usually open with expert information, research-backed information on the topic. But with such an expert coming on, we're going to let Dr. John talk for himself. He knows much more about what we are talking about than I do. I obviously have the mental health background, but he is the expert in the physical aspects we're going to be discussing today. We are so honored to have him join us in this series. So we'll be right back with Dr. John on WellSeekers. And we're back on WellSeekers with our guest, Dr. John. Dr. John, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Happy to be here. Excited.
So we were talking a bit about, because WellSeekers is all about the holistic approach from the mind down in restoring our mind, body, spirit. We were talking about before we came on the stress that people go through, right? And you'll hear people say, oh, I've aged 10 years after a loss or after something traumatic. Can we start by talking about that and both your personal and professional experience around what stress does to the body?
Well, first of all, there's no doubt that encountering stressful events, we live in a world that we self-create a lot of stress. It's called social media. It's called, now keeping up with the Joneses is keeping up with millions of Joneses. So we live in an environment, I think, where there's heightened stress in general. And when life stressors or events occur, I think that they have that much more impact, if you will, on the day-to-day. I shared with you, and I think it's important to communicate, what really was a major driver in opening the longevity lab. Our longevity practice here in Denver was a major life stressor for myself and my wife. Our first daughter passed away, and this was 2019. And I thought I was pretty mentally tough, physically tough, even resilient, so to speak. And this just wasn't part of my own mental story. And it's one thing if you kind of are somewhat prepared for an event, but obviously the ones that affect us most are the ones that we never saw coming. And that event taught me a lot about who I was and am, and a lot of the life lessons and strategies that I ultimately, I think, arrived at but took several years to get to, are the basis of how I engage with clients today. So I think these stressors and how they affect chronologic age versus physiologic age, there's absolutely scientific evidence that these intense stressors contribute significantly to the physiologic aging process driven through cortisol changes in the body and the net effect. But I mean, taking some of the science out of it and talking more in practicalities, I think the society we live in today, like I said, it has this baseline tone of stress. And we've also, many of us have lost the, call it mental toughness, mental resilience that older generations, like my grandparents, that was part and parcel to their existence. I think of my grandfather, who's 102 years old, will be 103 this December,
Wow,
lived
incredible.
through the Great Depression, was deployed to the South Seas during World War II. Resilience was a prerequisite to survivability. Now we live in this world where you have young kids and they fall down and 10 people are on top of them to help them up and to coax them through it. Not saying that that's wrong necessarily, but the general tone of the world we live in is almost anti-resilient. Resilience is something that is part and parcel to our development. But just like you train your muscles, build muscles in the gym, there's an aspect to which we have to build resilience through trials. I relate this, there's some fascinating scientific evidence, I think, that ties to resiliency and relates to a part of the brain. I'm sure you're well knowledged about this, but the ACC, the anterior cingulate cortex, um, in that part of the brain clearly is tied to, for lack of a better word, discomfort. And so when you look at populations using MRI, those that have underdeveloped ACCs, almost a primitive amount of actual brain tissue there, typically correlate with people who, if I can say this, have lived somewhat of a life of convenience, have maybe avoided certain stressors. That the most common population we talk about here are individuals who are obese. And it says something to me about not just the obvious surface level, the things we talk about. Oh, body positivity is a big thing right now, right? That's not really where I come from. I think being positive and having direction and focus is critical, but we're talking about major health hazards. And what we see in terms of brain anatomy is that individuals who live in discomfort to an extent, and you can find that in high level executives, you can find that in professional athletes, people who do things out of their comfort zone consistently. This part of the brain actually grows, it develops. This is biology at its core, and it demonstrates the ability. Guess what else goes hand in hand with people who have a robustly developed ACC? Resilience.
Resilience. Yeah, no,
Like
absolutely.
the resilient center of the human body.
And I'm definitely knowledgeable about that, specifically with Wim Hof. I'm not sure if you're familiar. Wim Hof, I'm certified in Wim Hof methods, and that's the whole basis, right? That there's this window of stress that actually recalibrates and helps us in mind and body. Is there, though, a point where that can sort of cross a line into something that is toxic to our body and does age us? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think again, my belief and my experience in this space, and again, I'm not a neurobiologist. It's certainly not my quote unquote field of expertise. But when you look at the activities that benefit the ACC, we'll stick kind of with a practical scientific application. Um, One, I think it should be strategically employed. Where you get into trouble is it actively taking on challenges or uncomfortable situations that tips it over the edge? Not likely. If it's in a controlled and anticipated setting, what I would argue is the key is building the mind and body, building strength and resilience in preparation for more stressful events. I'd argue that, again, someone with a well-developed ACC likely can come through an unpredictable life stressor like child loss better than someone who has an underdeveloped. But the process of getting there, I have less concern about an overload phenomenon or, like I said, an advanced physiologic aging phenomenon just directly related to seeking out, quite literally, just like I have a structured regimen at the gym. I have a programmatic approach to how I strengthen my muscles. Having a programmatic approach and actually being mindful, conscious of seeking out those activities. No, I don't worry about that. What's devastating, what's catastrophic is taking that individual who has not sought strengthening of the mind, resilience, and we can talk a lot about some cool technologies in that space. A lot of what we're seeing in the peptide space, right? Bringing science to bear on us. And I think that the catastrophic scenario is someone who has lived sort of that comfortable life. They've never sought out discomfort, and they get hit with this totally unexpected, untoward event. That, I think, very clearly ties to physiologic distress, detrimental physiologic response. And I really think that's a key difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes complete sense. What does happen to the body, Dr. Dunn, when that happens?
The easy explanation that's the answer for everything stress related is cortisol, right? High levels of dysregulation, hypercortisolemia for sustained, almost chronic duration is severely detrimental to metabolic health, to your sleep-wake cycles. It wreaks havoc on the body. Is that the only thing going wrong? No, I don't think so. But it is a core principle, I think, for the whole body effects. We realize, I think, at least I've come to realize how impactful the mind, a strong, resilient mind is. And so there you talk about addictive potential within those high stress environments. How do we regulate that feeling, if you will, of stress? We seek out dopamine in any way, shape, or form possible under those severe stress conditions. I'm sure you can educate me. Um, but the idea of chasing dopaminergic phenomenon, I think we're predisposed to addiction. That's what I saw in my own life. For me, what really came to light was food addiction. And sometimes people hear that like, oh yeah, whatever, it's not a big deal. But this kind of, maybe this can segue into, I talk a lot about what I believe the top 3 socially acceptable addictions are in the US today. In fact, maybe not even socially acceptable, but socially promoted: alcohol, food, and pornography. That's my belief. And I think all 3 of those are really viewed societally on the surface as, it's no big deal, right? Oh, so what? You had a stressful day, you deserve it, right? Whether that's alcohol or food. That couched in the presence of a severe trauma, for example, um, that becomes a big problem very, very quickly. And what society doesn't see is what goes on behind closed doors. And I think that's where a natural behavior, I mean, what was I seeking out? I was seeking out dopamine at all costs. Now, today, I have a strategic plan for a life stressor, and I provide those types of plans real time to my clients. I didn't have that. I didn't have that 6 years ago.
First of all, I agree with you. We were talking just briefly before. I feel like we're on the same page about a lot of things, which is why I'm excited to have you on in this first series back. But can you speak to your own personal experience with food addiction? And I'm shocked that people thought it was not a thing, because it's absolutely a thing. On any
Yeah,
level, clinically, we could validate for it, but go ahead. Yeah.
absolutely right. Well, last I checked, unfortunately, 73% of Americans are overweight or obese. So
So
Food
And then
addictions.
factor in, sorry to cut you off, but if you factor in then anorexia and bulimia
Right.
and how many
Sure.
Americans suffer from that, we're at 93%. And remember, this is reportable. So that's almost, if you factor in margin of error, right?
Yep.
We're very close to all of us having some sort of negative relationship with food.
Absolutely. I
Mhm.
love that statistic because I think, like you said, margin of error, I believe it's 100%. It sounds like you do too, right? In our relationships with food, it's dicey, right? So for me, think about, I mean, the thing about food addiction, addiction in any manner is really the once a behavior creates a dependency, right? Once a behavior alters lifestyle, once a behavior becomes toxic, but that's a gray area. It's very gray area, right? No one's telling me to put down the plate of food. No one, this is true. I would go through bags, the Costco bags of Sour Patch Kids.
Mm.
Um,
Which I was gonna mention this. You know that's a nervous system regulator, Sour Patch
yeah,
Kids? It's yeah.
yeah,
Yep, specifically.
absolutely.
Yep.
Right. And so you're seeking in every form and fashion. This is me as a physician who maybe in theory should know better. But in that moment of crisis and sustained crisis, it goes out the door. I think that the piece of the puzzle that's that wasn't there for me was the ability to recognize why I was doing what I was doing. Did genuinely, and I think everybody would say this, in the moment felt better, briefly, right? Um, the net effect over, 8 to 10 months after that event was gaining almost 50 pounds, and all unhealthy weight. I mean, there's no nothing good about that weight. Even that relative to my feelings of self-worth, self-validation, my general health. We're talking about mind, body, spirit, which is what I advocate for so strongly. I feel like we get boxed in, oh, you're a doctor, so you only care about the body. I didn't know we were now restricted to only talking about very narrow scopes. To me, as a physician, I became a physician to take care of people, like the whole person. And by the way, I didn't mention this. I don't know if it's come up or will come up, but I'm a surgeon by trade. I mean, my sport specialty, my training background is in surgery. So I get all kinds of flack from that too. Like, well, you have no business talking about metabolic health. My feeling is I have that much more business talking about because the only reason I'd be interested in it is because I'm truly passionate and I've sought out the education because it wasn't part of my formal education training. I know that's an aside, but as it relates to food addiction, I think it's incredibly sinister. Just like any addictive process is, right? A lot happens behind closed doors. And during that time, it was so dark that it was literally behind the closed door of my pantry, going in at night, just feeding to try to knock myself out almost. Um, And the dependency piece is, I think, the other thing that's so understated, especially as it relates to food addiction. Food is so intertwined with society, right? You know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
my grandma raised me for some time when I was in high school, and the idea of if I didn't have a second helping, that was personally offensive,
Mhm.
right?
I
So
mean, I'm Italian. It's
yeah,
personally offensive to not have
right,
multiple plates. Yes,
right.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and then say you're out with your girlfriends and you're nibbling on a salad. Well, is everything okay? Or what's going on? There's also the element I think of projection where other people, if you're trying to change, when I came to realize what's going on and trying to reset, now other people are looking at me weird because I'm not consuming massive quantities of food. So the whole process is very insidious. It's intertwined with culture, society, and I think that's what creates. So, I mean, that's why I agree. 100% of Americans are addicted to food in some way, shape, or form. And I don't think that in and of itself is the be all end all. But recognizing, hey, this is actually a problem. And it's not about being a control freak, or there's not something wrong with you by actually investing energy in regaining a healthy relationship with food.
You're bringing up so many key points. First of all, the mind is in the body. So when people separate the mind and body, it just always fascinates me. It's literally just the body, right? And the mind is a piece of that. But you're talking about such a larger systemic issue, right? Of this concept of, we'll call it ecosystem perspective, which I'm not sure you're familiar with, but that macro, um, micro, meso level. So, like the macro level of society, the meso level of community, and the micro level of genetic predisposition. And when it comes to food, it's everything, right? We get it on every level, those pressures. So, how did you shift into where you are today, Dr. John?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Think about it chronologically. We went through child loss in 2019. Maybe barely we're coming out of that um, devastating event as it affected our lives, and COVID hits, um, which I think it's quite obvious that COVID represents a critical point in history from a mental health and physical health perspective. I believe we have unmasked the widespread that the anxiety and depression dependency that our society has. Ultimately, I think it's created, right? Now we have, I mean, the thing is, you have access to so much at your fingertips that it almost takes on a relentless um, proportion to your day-to-day life, right? I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm trying to break the bad habit of literally when my alarm goes off, I check my news feed, check my emails, right? I mean, instantly I'm into that sort of toxic existence, right? And so for us, it wasn't until sort of late in that COVID period, I feel like that my wife and I regrouped enough to get our bearings, you know? Um, in that process too, we welcomed our daughter here on earth, who is a handful, but I love her to death.
Congratulations.
And so, yeah, and that you can imagine the
Yeah.
beauty of her being here with us came with extreme stress because of our previous experience. So it created this inherent chaos. And I think the turning point um, came about when she joined us, and we realized we now have two children here that we can't be fully present for, fully engaged. You almost put your own well-being second in a sense. But but for me, I think coming to terms with the fact that I needed to also allocate time to care for myself, because no one else is going to do that for you. So that balance and that drive, I've been healthy. I've led a reasonably healthy life. So I think it's somewhat easier to get back on track. So many of my clients, it's been a steady progressive decline, and they're coming in way behind the eight ball. So I definitely had that advantage. But what was also very clear is that if you want to get on track, mental health, physical health, performance, it's actually very difficult. You- I mean, I went through 4 or 5 personal trainers, 3 docs, because you're trying to find the right fit. You're trying to find the person whose your values are aligned. I want to get back on track as efficiently as possible. How do I do that? Went and sought out doctors for hormone optimization. Got turned away. Oh, you're fine. Here's one, your testosterone levels are normal, right? I mean, total testosterone was less than 300. So it's not red because it's above 285, but that's not
It's
normal.
not good. Yeah.
It's not only is it not good, it's most certainly not optimized. And so I looked at it, and again, this is what really led to the longevity lab as a practice is, hey, if I want a one-stop shop that aligns with my personal vision and goals to perform better day over day, that's not easy to find. That's actually takes a ton. And this is again, think about it. It's not just time, it's money, it's the energy and effort. And let me tell you, for even this is going to sound maybe a little silly, but for me, the emotional wear and tear of like getting down, I can't really find this person that fits into where I can really gel or mesh with. That process is exhausting. And that's what my wife and I found. We're like, at the end of doing this for about a year, I'm like, we're better off doing it for ourselves.
You're speaking again my language, I think, and we'll definitely get to the work you do, but this is a systemic issue, and I had this conversation yesterday with someone about it's our healthcare system
Yeah.
too, right? And you're
Yes.
jumping from provider to provider. The paperwork alone, which as a healthcare provider at one point as well, I know that it's required to get intakes, but for people on the other end of that, that's emotionally exhausting. Insurance, intakes, personalities, right? So it is getting help or asking for help is one step. And then when you go to seek it out and it's not there, it is emotionally exhausting to have it not be there and to keep going, right? So when that transpired for you and you decided to take matters into your own hands, what did that look like? And can you speak about the work you do now?
I've been in the hormone optimization, what we had called in my surgical practice prehab or prehabilitation program, trying to optimize patients better for surgery. You want to talk about a major stressor, you want to talk about major trauma. It's what we do in the operating room by definition. And I, for years, and got to a point where I was just fed up with taking people who are extremely unhealthy in just about every category to surgery and then shaking our heads when a year later they're still struggling. Well, just like I said, you want to experience a major life stressor and come through it better on the other side. You have to be globally prepared, if you will, for the unexpected. And the only way to do that is to strengthen the mind, the spirit, the body. The human mind, body, spirit are incredibly powerful and incredibly resilient at their core. But you can condition the body to not be resilient anymore from a metabolic perspective. And you can also condition the mind. We see it, right? You deal with it every day. And so I had been doing that for years before the shift to the longevity lab occurred. And the real impetus that transition was, I want to do better and I want to serve more to the scope of people today. I've got this narrow spectrum surgical practice. I wanted to take the sort of the blips on the map and transform that into science backed, data driven, results oriented longevity practice. And for me, I get this question all the time. People, what do you read? What do you, I also, I've commentary I'll make on kind of the modern medical education system. But, what do you read to become an expert in longevity medicine? My answer is Chat GPT.
Uh, is that real?
That the real life answer is, now, obviously you need to be able to comprehend the scientific literature. You need to be able to process, digest. I mean, that's my role, is taking all the scientific information and delivering a transformative protocol to a human being. But at the end of the day, the longevity space is moving and evolving at such a speed that any textbook that's written, I mean, I have I have Outlive, I have all these texts, which are great, but literally when it goes to print, it's outdated. That's what makes this space so cool in my mind, but also very intimidating because never before has there been this conversion of, I look at it all the time. I mean, how many experts in the longevity space does their Instagram profile say entrepreneur?
Oh, so many, and
So,
that's actually
so
one of
let's
the
think
reasons
through this,
I like
right?
you. Yeah.
And
Yes.
a great example of that, right? I think you had mentioned, the concept of biohacking.
Mhm.
That's something I'm sure we can touch on here, but uh, it's a little disturbing to see the revenue being created without scientific evidence. Never before have we gone that far off the beaten trail, almost to the point that physicians, like myself, have to maybe over exaggerate our qualifications because we're actually discredited by our degree. Does that make sense?
It
Oh, you're a
absolutely
physician
is.
on social media. You must be
Mhm.
selling something.
Mhm.
Really? But the entrepreneur that's made on paper $50 million off of something, is he trustworthy? It's a weird dynamic we're living in. So our focus really became, okay, we went through this event. I highly doubt we are the only people in the world to go through a catastrophic stressor and get derailed. We want to provide an experiential practice defined by best in class, evidence based, physician directed guidance to those that want to focus on longevity, not just duration, but quality of life. That really became our moniker. If you look better, feel better, you perform better, plain and simple. Um, but the evolution, even in our practice, that I think is fascinating, is this has been the greatest challenge of my professional career. I've been a physician for 20 years. The last 2.5 years since we opened our doors at the Longevity Lab has been more stimulating than, I gotta be honest, probably a good portion of my career. You have the training period where everything's new and you're drinking out of a fire hydrant. But then I feel like in our careers as professionals, it's possible, if not probable, that you kind of sort of plateau. Find your comfort zone, right? Your lane, if you will. I get that a lot. Well, stay in your lane. You're a surgeon. Like I didn't know that I missed the lane lines somewhere along the road. But that's for me has been a huge motivation. It's transformed my life. And fundamental to that, and again, the origin of this practice was our motto. I'm never going to ask you to do something I haven't done myself.
Mm,
Yeah,
beautiful.
I'm sure you're aware of Tim Ferriss. Um, but Tim Ferriss is an idol of mine that I would love to meet at some point in my life and thank him for the 4-hour body. Someone gave it to me on my Nook. Do you remember a Nook? This is how
Mhm, I do. Yeah, I'll
my
age
kids
myself too.
are like, "Nook, what is this? Where's your iPad?" Um, but I took it to my first tour in Afghanistan and read the 4-hour body. Here's what inspired me about it. The thing is, you're taking scientific information, you're digesting it, you're looking at the quality of data and scientific rigor, and then you're testing it on yourself. Does this actually play out in real life? Now, do I think I'm the same as everybody else? No, but at a minimum, as a physician, if I'm going to ask you to do something based off of something I read, I feel disingenuous in that. If I can't, and with all due respect, if I can't outperform my clients, that is the greatest challenge in my life. As I see it, is I want to always outperform my own clients because that keeps me honest. I hear the big name guys like Atia talk about, oh, metrics, 40, 50-year-old man should be able to carry his body weight, farmer carry 1 minute. I would challenge him to video himself doing just that because I did it last week. I carried 220 pounds in a farmer carry for a minute. It is difficult. It's extremely difficult.
I
You gotta-
couldn't imagine.
It's
Yeah.
not, you don't just do that on a whim. So we've got all of these guys pontificating about what to do. And I challenge every one of them, but it doesn't look like you do it. So there's a gap there that I think we owe it to ourselves as clinicians. I mean, borrowing a disastrous, whatever, injury or deformity or something, we should be critically evaluating everything we're educating clients to on ourselves. That's hence so our practice, the longevity lab, the lab piece of it, it's quite simple. We're literally walking human experiments.
How does it work, Dr. Johnson? If someone comes in and wants to optimize longevity or just get on a new course with rebuilding, what does the process look like?
So for us here, we try to have a pretty structured intro and enrollment process. Like I said, everything here is data driven. So the upfront challenge, I mean, as a physician, part of that is in interview or that initial patient visit. But I don't even start there. I start with data collection. So someone that expresses interest, we enroll them in our initial program, which is comprehensive lab analysis, so full blood panel, and then body metrics. So we actually use a device called Shape Scale. So we get measurements of the human body. And I'll tell you how I come from this perspective. And then we use a technology called InBody for body composition analysis. Okay. Here's the thing. This is what I tell clients. I think my role is being the GPS, high resolution GPS of Google Maps. So Google Maps is great. If you turn off your GPS, Google Maps is as worthless as you just walking around in circles. The biggest challenge I see in the longevity space, still 2025, we're flying blind. We're asking people, hey, do you feel better? That's not enough. If I can't prove to you with objective data that the reason you're feeling better is biomarker A, B, C, and D, I haven't done my job. And so the piece of the puzzle that I felt that we've invested the most in is the diagnostic, the assessment. So that when we sit down, I want to know who you are. I want to understand maybe potential lifestyle constraints or your life history. How does that weave into your fabric? And then I need to put that up against very solid black and white data. How is this manifesting? Because again, think if you don't have a GPS on, how on earth, if you don't know where you are today, where you're starting at a very high resolution, how could you possibly seek to get to point B when you don't know where you are? And when you talk to people and ask for sort of, I always approach it kind of from a self-assessment. Where do you think you are? Right? The disparity is profound. And that's not a knock. That's just simply the reality. A great example is all the data around nutrition and calorie reporting, right? On average, we underreport calorie consumption by 50%.
I didn't know that
So
statistic.
think about that.
Mhm.
All my clients come in that want weight loss, then we don't talk about weight loss here. We talk about healthy body composition change. But why do all those clients come in and almost uniformly, they're doing everything right? I'm not eating, doc. I'm doing this. The simplest answer is to consider the fact that they may be way off base. And that's not necessarily, I'm not pointing fingers. It's not necessarily malicious, but it's reality. It's the world we live in.
So when people come in and you focus on the root cause, is there past diagnostic, is the process streamlined from there, or is it just variable depending on why someone's there?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to take into consideration where someone's priorities lie. One thing I've made the mistake of in my career is assuming that I know what you want because it's what I want. That obviously is a dead end, right? And so I think it's really honing in on the priorities of each individual, but also the core focus of our practice with longevity. If you're coming to the longevity lab, you probably have some interest around longevity. That I think is a fair assumption. I hope.
Mhm.
um,
Absolutely.
and so there are some core or crucial principles to longevity that really play out for every patient at some level. And I think maintaining a focus on those biomarkers, those key predictors that move the needle for individuals, and then building out that individualized plan for that person based on a lot of factors, not only where their priorities lie, but it may have to do with what resources they have available. Not everybody has the funds to do X, Y, and Z, even if it might help them more so. So really have to find that sweet spot. But the individualization piece is everything. No two people are alike, no two plans are alike. And I think that's part of the problem in the conventional medical system is, and listen, I'm not critical at all of what I would term medicine 1.0. What people have to understand is doctors' time has been so profoundly devalued that a doctor's reasonably maybe seeing 50 patients in a day. It's simple math. You can't necessarily focus on them and say, oh, well, they didn't spend enough time. Folks, it's actually inconceivable to
Mhm.
have more than 5 minutes in a busy primary care practice. You literally
Mhm.
keep the lights on, literally.
Mhm.
So the dilemma with medicine 1.0 is your best case scenario, you're putting band-aids on problems. That is the best case scenario. And you're probably even still missing a lot of problems. I think medicine 2.0 was sort of that, you hear like preventative medicine. Um, so I think where I strongly differentiate what we do as medicine 3.0 is still there's a sort of acceptance of, well, these diseases are inevitable. We just want to try to trim them down to a more manageable process. That's medicine 2.0. Medicine 3.0 is, hey, I can calculate pretty reasonably what disease potential exists based on a certain number of criteria, certain level of biomarkers, and where you are at chronologically and physiologically in age.
Mhm.
Here we take a very targeted strategic approach to fixing the problems at their core. That's number one, but also being anticipatory of what are the most likely things to kill you based off of genetics, biomarkers, the data that we have. But again, you got to have data. If you don't, you're just flying blind.
If someone's out there and this is resonating, I mean, personally, it's resonating with me, and I follow longevity experts. I would love to talk about biohacking if we have time, but if someone's listening and they're in this with you, they agree, right? What are some steps? Is it? I mean, I know they could probably reach out to your clinic. I'm assuming you serve more than just Denver area, or
Yes.
is that a wrong assumption? Okay.
No, you're
So
correct.
they could reach out to your clinic. Are there other pathways people can pursue as well to get started?
Yeah, absolutely. I said, let's talk about longevity 101. So when you look at, the way I analyze uh, the breadth of the biomarkers, you see this now on social media all the time. We check 150 data points, 150. That's great. Okay. Now, if you look at that, maybe 147 of those are okay. A couple will actually have profound impact. And when we talk about relative risk of mortality, all cause mortality is the ultimate definition to me of longevity. If I have something that can provide a meaningful, predictable reduction in your chances of dying from anything, I by definition extended your lifespan and arguably your health span. So that's the easiest. People ask me all the time, well, why do you think such and such supplement is a longevity based supplement? For me, it has to tie directly back to one of these three core principles. Now, two we hear about all the time, and the third somehow is just not talked about. So I'll explain that. But the two principal biomarkers of longevity are VO2 max, okay, as a marker or metric to assess cardiopulmonary performance, the ability to extract oxygen from the air, to transfer, deliver it to the body. And then also there's a cellular component, how well the body can then use that oxygen to convert it to energy. Okay. So VO2 max, skeletal muscle mass. Okay. There is a clear relationship between skeletal muscle mass and long-term health. Now, taking a step back, you talk it out loud, it should make sense, right? If you have more muscle, we talk about frailty as a risk as a risk factor for mortality, right? Frailty is the antithesis of optimal muscle health. Okay. But as I see it, and with all the scientific evidence that exists, muscle health predominates in terms of direct documentable benefits. Okay. Why? Muscles, top to bottom, muscles contract. You probably know all about this. They release myokines, right? Termed hope molecules, what have you. Brain derived nootropic factor. Now we're making a peptide. Guess what? If you go to the gym, you can get BDNF for free. Okay. Immune health and support. Those myokines also support a healthy immune system, reduce the rate of common cold substantially. Okay. Um, Cardiovascular health. Again, when you talk about VO2 max, you have to talk about muscle because muscle has a positive effect on the cardiovascular system. Brain health. I mean, the list is so long, but pure and simple. When you look at the lowest quartile of muscle mass, so what we call under-muscled individuals, okay, there's a pooled relative risk, almost 200% higher risk of death from anything than the highest. And that's an age-related, by the way, it's important to understand that metric is age-related. So I'm not
Okay.
suggesting. Someone asked me one
Yeah.
time, they're like, why don't we see people over the age of 100 look like bodybuilders? Because this is relative, okay? But the concept, the principle of being strong in the body is derived from muscle. And ultimately, the principal effect, and this is the third biomarker that trumps the first two, is insulin sensitivity.
Goodness. And this is a big one.
This
Yeah.
is the no, it is
Mhm.
it is the one. And everybody gets into these arguments. Well, Peter Attia said VO2 max is most important. It's never been included in that conversation. But when you look at the net impact of resistance, the antithesis of insulin sensitivity, here's the deal. Okay. Relative risk of type 2 diabetes, this is common sense, 5 to 10x over the general population. Coronary disease, 3x more likely. Alzheimer's, 2x more likely. Colorectal cancer, breast cancer, 2x more likely. All-cause mortality, 2.5 times more likely if you're insulin resistant. We're missing the boat. We're talking about, like you said, we're talking all about this stuff out here. Here's hypertension, obesity, diabetes, right? And oh, by the way, they're really big industries too, and big pharma, right? That's
Absolutely.
all on the periphery and central to that metabolic calamity is insulin resistance. So when you consider those, I mean, it's like we talk about biomarkers that predict cardiovascular risk and mortality. Okay, here's the thing. Yes, cardiovascular disease is still the number one killer in the United States today. Okay. But cardiovascular disease plus dementia, plus stroke, plus cancer, plus, do you see, that's killing a lot more people. Insulin resistance is responsible for this.
So if we're back to root cause and insulin
Yep.
resistance is obviously what I'm hearing is it is the epicenter of root cause for not just one disease, but all these diseases that are leading to death, right? Where do we start with the repair? And maybe it's different for everyone. I actually don't know that answer, but where do we start with the repair?
I think traditionally the commentary has been diet and exercise. What on earth does that mean? Okay.
Especially today. What does that mean?
Exactly. Right. Now, I'll tell you what I think most Americans hear when you say diet and exercise. They hear cardio, Peloton, something or other, and restrictive dieting. Two things that I do not advocate for my clients at a starting point. If you are metabolically dysfunctional, and we define that, the critical biomarker is fasting insulin. I looked it up. It costs like $35. Okay. It's a test where we actually check the level of insulin in your bloodstream when you're fasted. That level should be almost negligible, right? Because the principal stimulus for insulin secretion in the pancreas is glucose. So if you're fasted, there should be no stimulus for insulin production. The issue with insulin resistance is it's a whole body phenomena. And ultimately, insulin gets blamed for a glucose problem. Okay. That's at the core of insulin resistance. Why do we see such high rates of insulin resistance in the United States today? Pretty simple. Highly refined sugars, ultra processed foods. We live in an environment. I just saw a client earlier today before we hopped on this who said, life is crazy, fast food is easy. That was his answer for, do you follow any current diet practices, right? Hey, we live in a fast food world, right?
Yeah, and I think fast food also looks like, and I'm guilty of this, protein bars, right, that are probably filled with seed oils.
We're scratching the surface. But again, if we're prioritizing, you're saying, hey, someone's interested in all this stuff. The questions come up about what supplements should I be on? What's it? I have people come in and they're like, I want peptide X. I heard it helps with living longer. Their fasting insulin is 15. Don't worry about the peptide. The peptide's not going to do jack in a highly inflamed environment that you're literally swimming in a cesspool and you think you're going to do a shot and that's going to fix. Now, if there's a shot, one shot that directly impacts on insulin resistance, people don't like me saying this, but is in the GLP class of peptides.
Why don't they like it? Why don't they like you saying that?
Oh my gosh. People are cheating. People are lazy. Oh, it has all these horrible side effects, all this kind of stuff. When used appropriately, the most potent substrate on planet Earth today to directly reverse insulin resistance are GLP peptides. And generationally, they are becoming more and more effective with arguably fewer and fewer side effects. Okay. But this segues into the natural solution for all this. If you're going to do one thing and one thing only to combat insulin resistance, you know what that is?
I don't. I would think I would, though.
Build healthy, lean muscle. Do you see so that's why I say muscle is way more important than VO2 max when you get right down to it, because muscle directly antagonizes, I'll explain this, directly antagonizes insulin resistance. The more muscle you have, the more insulin sensitive you are by definition. That is not something that can be debated. That's not opinion, that's fact. Why? Because every muscle cell has millions of insulin receptors. Okay, I get it. Insulin resistant, your receptors aren't working well. Yeah, but I just added a million. That's pointing us in the right direction. Millions of GLUT4 receptors, or excuse me, transport channels. So how does glucose get from the bloodstream to the cell? And then most importantly, the number of mitochondria, mitochondrial density. We haven't talked about this, but what goes wrong in the body first, principally in terms of the physiologic aging process, arguably is mitochondrial health is compromised.
Right, which leads to a lot of cancers. That is one of the leading causes of cancer.
See where I'm going with this? Like the issue that I beg of people is if you're concerned about living longer and better, the starting point unequivocally take all the wealth of scientific data. Instead of chasing your tail, build muscle.
I think one of the complex issues there, though, and looking on social media and being involved in social and studying social media, that's one of my areas of study is well-being in social media. But there's so much misinformation. There's so much drastically opposing information on how you build lean muscle. So if we were going to come to you, because I do feel like you're an actual expert, not just some of the people you were talking about earlier, right? What is it? Because there's 10 different, probably more philosophies out there right now.
What I would say the most scientifically tried and true mechanism to build lean muscle is resistance exercise, weightlifting, and a phenomenon we term progressive overload. Now, we can get into the weeds and the minutia, but the fact of the matter is, and this is why I think we see culturally, one of the reasons, okay, hormone imbalance, nutrition, another element of it, but in women specifically, is women are so averse. Every time I meet with a female client, is, am I going to get bulky? I don't want to get bulky. I tell, please don't worry. That'd be like 20 pounds of muscle. All I'm asking you to add is 3 to 5 pounds. That will change the course of your life. Again, like I said, we've got to look at things that move the needle. And in my practice, muscle is medicine by definition. So my principal focus, my principal target, if we're going to change the course of your life, live longer, better, I'm going to start by a central focus day over day. Muscle needs to be part of the conversation. And again, mechanistically, the most efficient strategy to build muscle is to provide resistance to those muscles. That's what stimulates growth. We can get into the weeds of the tempo and the timing and all this kind of stuff. But my greatest challenge to everybody is getting in some form of gym with some form of resistance training. Now, do body weight exercises count? As we age, yes. But when you're young, you're healthy, you don't have joint pains and injuries, that is the time to focus on building lean muscle. Because listen, no one's going to debate as we age, it is indeed harder, physiologically more difficult. There's something called basically anabolic resistance. Okay. So as we age, receptors for specifically testosterone decline. Our sensitivity to testosterone as a principal anabolic agent declines. Production declines. So there's no question that age-related decline is a very real phenomenon. But the opportunity to build that muscle should be starting in childhood. We need to be educating parents and their kids that actually it is safe for a child to perform resistance exercises. I post videos of my son. I take him to the gym with me. The idea that a 7-year-old, again, I'm not, this is where social media presents these extremes. Oh, you're trying to make him a bodybuilder. No, I'm trying to give him mental fortitude through challenging his body. I'm trying to give him strength to overcome. Simply moving a 5-pound weight for him is the world. But that's where it starts. But again, I would stress, doesn't mean if you're 25, 35, 45, miss my opportunity, I'm done, right? We have laser focused and strategic about building muscle where there is opportunity.
Dr. Jen, we're gonna definitely have to have you come back since it's already been an hour and I feel like I could talk to you for an hour more. No, it's a brilliant conversation and you truly, we so appreciate your expertise and your actual knowledge. I've shared this with a couple other guests, but there was a study done that 85 to 90% of the information you find in the well-being space on social media is misinformation. So having experts like you on is even more important, especially right now with all the misinformation.
I would say, is it that
Well,
low? Because, well, the
I know,
hardest,
I
I mean, the
know.
pros and cons of social media are, one, you have to take a very rigid position. Everything's black and white. If this, one or the other. These are very highly nuanced conversations. Why do I run my practice? So I don't have 30 seconds to tell you what to do. But what I will say is we still have to focus on things that move the needle. Because when you've got a short list, like I said, 3 things that reduce all-cause mortality exponentially, I'd get these 3 things right. Now, if you come and see me and you're dialed on those 3, yes, we'll get into peptides. We'll talk about tweaks, right? But at its core, we are trying to exist in a way overcomplicated world. Literally, prove me wrong. Build muscle, you're healthier. Period. One thing.
I love how you broke it down like that because it is simplistic, but it's often missed because people leap to the complicated aspects of longevity. So we will have you back on. Before we let you go, we're gonna have all your your site so you can get a hold of Dr. John if you want to. And his Instagram is fabulous. Follow him. I've learned things,
Please.
and I was a Division I athlete. I was a competitive athlete at 10, and you've taught me things. So thank you for the work you're doing. Just one last question. If you were to pick, and I've asked all of my guests this season about this, but one thing right now in more of the advanced realm of your field that helps with longevity, and then one.
So I would say bang for your buck, it has to be in the metabolic space. And I would tell you, I think one of the most impressive technologies in the metabolic space that doesn't get talked about enough is a device called Lumen.
Oh, I
It's
have
a
a
li-
Lumen.
you have a Lumen?
Love
So
it. I have a Lumen.
Lumen, listen,
I
it
should go
bugs
back to it. Oh,
it bugs the heck out of me when other
yes.
people come up with great ideas and I miss the
Mhm.
boat. Lumen did something truly transformative, truly revolutionary. Their platform's amazing, but the device itself is so simple. All it's doing is testing carbon dioxide in the breath. And the amount of carbon dioxide, the relative percent of the carbon dioxide directly correlates to your fuel source. The biggest thing that's missing from all the fad diets and all the guidance on social media, they have one fatally flawed assumption. And that is you and I are the exact same. Our bodies respond to fuel the exact same. That's the way a fad diet works. Now, listen, you may get it within 60%, 70%. But the beauty of Lumen's technology is it's 100% you. This is how food affects you. You can't run and hide. I tell my clients, we use Lumen for the technology, for the data, but I also use it as an accountability resource. Humans lie, the human body does not. You can tell me, oh, I'm restricting my calories. Oh, I didn't eat after 4 p.m. Oh, blah, 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 blah. And your body's burning pure carbohydrates for fuel at bedtime. One of these things don't align. So that's that is such a simple but powerful tool that I advocate for all my clients because it's that real-time feedback. This is actually what food's doing in your body.
Amazing. I'm gonna go break my Lumen out. I
Yeah,
stopped using that. But no,
absolutely.
it's an incredible device, and it does really break down what you're actually
Yeah,
burning and what you need, and it tells you, you should go eat this right
exactly.
now. Yeah,
Powerful.
powerful. Dr. John, thank you so much for joining us, and we definitely will
Pleasure.
have you back.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. We'll be right back on Well Seekers. Welcome back to Well Seekers. Thanks so much again to Dr. John for joining us and having that conversation. He's incredible, and everyone that's been on this series, we're calling the Rebuild Lab here at Well Seekers, has just been so phenomenal. I feel so honored to spend time and to learn from people's expertise and their personal experience and to spend time with all of you and to get your messages. I'm on social media at Lucia Naz at WellSeekers. Find us, follow us if you want to. Would love to have you follow us, but also would just love to have you reach out. Tell us what's impacted you, what you've liked about the show, what you haven't liked about the show, right? Who you want on, who you want to see. Would love to hear about your stories and experiences too. So please, when people say, follow and reach out, I'm really saying like connect because we love to connect here. So um feel free to send us a message or send me a message too. I'm online a little bit too much, but also because I'm writing a lot of papers and doing a lot of research. So before we let you go, if you watch the show, you know that we usually leave you with a tool, one online, one offline. I feel like this tool is both online and offline, but Dr. John mentioned the Lumen. So I think this tool is like covers both actually. It does have an app component and then it has this component. It is more of like a tech tool, but um I happen to have a Lumen and it is really like he mentioned it as like one of the best things. So I thought, I'm going to grab my Lumen. Here's the deal. And one of the reasons that we're doing this, sorry, someone just texted me, which I wish I could share this text. I will at another point in time. But um, the Lumen is such a fascinating device. And one of the reasons that we're doing this show was because I feel like I even lost my way in my own rebuild. And um, there are so many things that I used to do that helped me, and the Lumen was one of them. And that's why I wanted to grab it. But what it does is when he said you literally blow into it, you literally blow into it. There's an app component. It's loading and it's white, so you're never going to see it. And if you're listening, you're not going to be able to see it. But basically, this tool is one that you turn on, you link it to your app, you blow into it, you hold your breath, you blow out, and it measures what your body is actually burning. And it's accurate. This is evidence-based, science-based. You heard Dr. John talk about it in a more scientific way, but it'll tell you, oh, you're burning carbs right now. Um, I just had lunch, so we can even inhale deeply through your hold your breath. Exhale in 3, 2, 1. So now it's going to tell me I just had lunch. I had like eggs and some vegetables. Um, But earlier today, I had carbs. So basically what it's saying is I am burning 55% carbs, 45% carbs, 55% fat. So what it's saying is I'm basically in between. And what we want to do if we're trying to obviously burn more fat is be in fat burning mode. So what it will do now, and this is the incredible part of it, I'll hit next. It'll tell me where I am, and then it'll build the day around. It'll tell me exactly what to eat around it. If you follow it, it's absolutely phenomenal. When I have followed this, I have felt better. I have lost fat. I have hit goals. I'm not in a season of probably following this. I'm getting back into a season. And I just want to say that um, when I do, though, this has been one of the most, Dr. Drum is right, one of the most incredible tools. I've had this for years. I'm actually going to reach out to Lumen and see if we can do a giveaway because I feel like it is a little pricey and I would love to give one away to the WellSeekers community. So we can call them out right here and hopefully we can get a Lumen to give away. Dr. John, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and for everyone that's helped make this show possible. Jen, my producer, Chris, my editor, thank you so much. And for all of you, most importantly, for being a part of our family and being here and letting us be a part of your family and your life and your time. We couldn't imagine spending our time any other way. Thanks for being a part of our family, and we'll see you here soon on WellSeekers.
What's on your mind? Email us at hello@wellseekers.com.